it's very clear that older patients who take GLP-1s can lose a significant amount of lean mass, and that can reduce their muscle power. What this study shows is that it may be possible to prevent that reduction in power with the use of this new compound, enobosarm.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for another Virtual Investor KOL Connect segment. My name is Janine Thomas. I am CEO of JTCIR, and I will be the moderator. Today, we are featuring Veru Inc., and I am very pleased to be joined by Veru's chairman and CEO, Dr. Mitchell Steiner. And I am grateful to have with us today our KOL for this segment, Dr. Louis Aronne. And Dr. Aronne is a leading authority on obesity and its treatment, and past president of the Obesity Society and founder of the American Board of Obesity Medicine. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So happy to have you. Before we get started, I just want to remind our audience that Veru is publicly listed on NASDAQ and trades under the ticker VERU. And during today's discussion, the company will be making forward-looking statements. And I encourage everyone to view the company's latest SEC filings on their website at verupharma.com for the latest filings and information. So, gentlemen, this is the first time we've had this topic on our platform, and I could not be more excited. So we're going to dive right in. So, Dr. Aronne, to set the stage, investors are certainly familiar with GLP-1 drugs for weight loss, including the approved drugs Wegovy and Zepbound. And while these drugs seemingly have helped people lose weight, there's new evidence to suggest the weight loss induced by these drugs is not just fat, but important skeletal muscle. So there was a recent New England Journal of Medicine paper that found up to 50% of the total weight loss induced from these drugs might be lean muscle. Can you help investors understand why this might be the case and how this risk is underappreciated by those seeking to take the GLP-1 drugs?
Sure. So the loss of lean mass can occur in anyone who loses weight. In fact, it does. Usually about 25% of what you're losing when you lose weight is going to be lean mass, and 75% is fat mass. The faster you lose weight, in other words, the better the medication and the better the result that the patient gets, the more likely they are to lose lean mass. People don't realize this, but it's actually easier to lose muscle than it is to lose fat. And so what we've learned is we have to protect muscle. We have to do things like resistance exercise, like high protein diets, in order to minimize the amount of lean mass loss. Now, this is particularly a problem in older people because they already have less muscle mass. That may be something that contributes to their obesity in the first place. So this is an important clinical issue for certain segments of the population who are using these new, fantastically effective and also life-changing medications.
Dr. Aronne, thank you for explaining that important background. In light of that, Veru has a drug called enobosarm on which they recently presented phase 2b data earlier this year. So before we get into that data, Dr. Steiner, can you tell us about enobosarm? How does it work, and why does it make sense to study this drug in combination with GLP-1 drugs?
Well, as Dr. Roney said, particularly in older patients, you worry because they lose significant muscle, they start out with less muscle. And enobosarm is one of those drugs that's been around for about 10 plus years and started out as a drug for frailty. As you know, frailty is the muscle loss that occurs with aging. And it's been in 27 clinical trials and has shown consistently to improve muscle, improve physical function, burn fat, and protect bone. But what makes it unique is that it uses the androgen receptor. That's a testosterone receptor. And we know, of all the things we know today, that the androgen receptor, the testosterone receptor, is the best receptor to modify body composition. We know that. You look at bodybuilders, they lose fat, they gain muscle, they get chiseled. If an obese patient takes testosterone, they shrink. You can see the muscle, they burn their fat. But the problem with testosterone by itself, it's a hormone. And so enobosarm was developed by a former company, GTX, and now it's licensed into Veru, as a drug that was, think of it as a testosterone that's neutral in the sense that you don't see some of the side effects of testosterone. So, for example, the worry for giving it to a woman is a woman may get masculinized. Enobosarm is non-steroidal, so it's not a steroid. It's a hormone mimetic, meaning it acts like a hormone, but it's not. And so as a result, you don't see the masculinization, it doesn't get converted to estrogen. And so you can give it to women and take advantage of the fact that it can maintain or build bone, improve physical function, burns fat, and protects bone, as I mentioned. And so as a result, you can give it to women. So because of the past, and we've shown in at least 5 clinical studies using muscle as an endpoint, and these studies were done in older men and postmenopausal women, that it consistently improved muscle, burned fat, improved physical function, and we heard that the GLP-1 essentially is creating an accelerated frailty. In other words, you're seeing that patients with age would lose about 1.5% of lean mass per year. What you were seeing instead is that you're seeing 4% at 16 weeks, for example, or 8% at a year. So you're seeing what appears to be about 5 to 10 years of muscle loss that occurs with GLP-1s because of the non-selective way, as Dr. Aronne says, it takes tissue. Non-selective means, it makes sense, your brain is being told to stop eating. And when you stop eating, your body's in a low-calorie state. In a low-calorie state, your body acts like you're in nature, not eating. If you're not eating, you're going to burn muscle, you're going to burn fat. Novosarum comes in and says, you know what, we're going to try to make GLP-1 super selective for tissue. And what it does, it tells muscle to stop burning and tells fat to burn more to make up for the same weight loss. That's what's so cool. So Veru, like other companies in this space, bring 20 years, 15 years of experience in frailty into this space in which we now recognize is such an important thing to maintain lean mass for the weight loss journey, and we think enobosarm can hopefully meet that need as a drug that's given in combination with a GLP-1.
Great background, Dr. Steiner. So as I mentioned, Veru reported results of the phase 2b study called Quality back in January of this year. So Dr. Aronne, can you tell us about this study and a high-level overview of the data the company reported?
Sure. I want to point out 2 things. Number one, I'm very enthusiastic about this approach because dealing with this all the time, we recognize that this is an issue. And I also want to point out that I'm a consultant for Veru. I'm also a shareholder in Veru because I'm so enthusiastic about it. But the results of the study showed that rather than 1/3 of the weight that was lost being lean mass, only 10% was lean mass. That's a huge difference. That's less than we would normally, much less than we would normally expect to see. So 1/3 versus 10%. If we look at some of the other important indicators, the total loss of fat was significantly greater, 25% more fat loss with the combination of enobosarm and semaglutide rather than just the semaglutide alone. So these are important milestones. This was just a 16-week trial, however. It's very preliminary data. The amount of weight that was lost in the placebo and semaglutide group was about 4%, and with enobosarm, the amount of lean mass loss was, as I said, 70% less. 70% less, really a great result.
Excellent, and certainly seems like very exciting preliminary data. So Dr. Steiner, can you tell us what the next steps are for the enobosarm in this indication?
Well, very, very excited because what's very important to understand is the clinical trial was done in older patients. One of the things that people will say for sure, these are the patients you're most worried about. They're the highest risk because they start out with less muscle to be impaired and impacted by the loss of that muscle. And they lose muscle, they get muscle weakness. That muscle weakness leads to balance problems, falls, fractures, increase in hospitalizations, mortality. It dips into the frailty literature. And so we can predict that patients will get in trouble, and that's what we're so worried. And younger patients tolerate better, but they still lose lean mass. So the reason from a regulatory standpoint, we decided to go after older patients who are most at risk, and there's a call to action to do something. You want them to have the benefits of the GLP-1. Let's be very clear. GLP-1 is not the enemy, but it's non-specific. It's taking muscle and fat to get the benefits of cardiovascular, etc., and weight loss. So to be very clear, what we showed is that one of our doses, 3 milligram dose, we kind of hold on to lean. And we make up for that with burning more fat, so you get to essentially the same weight loss. But what's also important, think about that for a moment, that means you had absolutely changed so that 99%, 90 to 99% of what you lost is fat. By definition, weight loss drug should be a drug that reduces adiposity, reduces fat. And obesity is the disease of fat. So fat is the enemy. No one, you get points off for losing lean mass. Nobody that you don't want to do that. That doesn't give you the benefit. With that said, our thinking, and let me make another very, very important point. The other very important point is that this is also the first study to show that if you lose lean mass, if you lose 32% of what you lost as lean mass, it impacts function. And we measured function by stair climb. Why stair climb? Stair climb is an activity of daily living. Patients have to climb stairs. Stairs use your quadriceps, your leg muscles. Leg muscles are very sensitive to enobosarm or testosterone-like drugs. And so stair climb is a very sensitive way to measure whether you provided benefit. And the concern that we had was there's very little data, because it's such a new field, of what is the impact of this muscle loss. And so we were able to show just 16 weeks that 42.6% of patients on semaglutide alone, on Wegovy alone, had a greater than 10% decline in stair climb power. That is like 7 to 8 years of normal aging happening in 16 weeks. There is a problem. Done. If there's a problem, that really opens up an incredible door for us from a regulatory standpoint. The FDA recognizes drugs as being a weight loss drug or a body composition drug. So we don't see ourselves as a weight loss drug per se. We see ourselves as a body composition drug that improves muscle, improves fat, so your weight loss journey allows you to lose just fat. But when you improve muscle, improve lean mass, the question becomes, what does that mean to the patient? What's clinically meaningful? Now, putting on muscle is cosmetic, I get it. And you can hold on to it, it looks great. But how do you prove it from a regulatory standpoint? So the answer is you use as an endpoint a functional endpoint, stair climb power. So if you have a situation where you lose weight and you limit or prevent the number of patients from getting into troubles, in other words, you stop the decline in physical function, that's clinically meaningful. So the next steps, because this test was positive, and by the way, we do have some additional catalysts coming up. We do have the full data, safety data coming for the quality study this quarter. We also have another part of the study, which is very exciting as well, which is what happens when you stop with GLP-1. Because what happens now when you stop with GLP-1, you get the fat regain and you get the weight back. And people get very unhappy because they lost all this weight and it comes back. And the working hypothesis with enobosarm, if you hold on to muscle, that allows you to lose more weight and not get the rebound fat regain. And so what we're hoping to see this quarter in the same patients, 168 patients, is we're hoping to see that the placebo group, meaning they've not on GLP-1 but they've lost muscle, gets that rebound with the fat regain, and then enobosarm blunts that. In fact, it'd be great to see if enobosarm can even cause more fat loss. The idea is you need an off-ramp. People are going to stop with GLP-1 for all kinds of reasons, and if they know that it's soft to landing, that'll be pretty cool. That data will come out this quarter as well. So because we have a positive study during the active weight loss period of the study, we plan to file and submit a package to the FDA for what's called the end of F.A.C.S meeting. That's an important meeting where you meet with the FDA to talk about what the Phase 3 design will look like. Again, what we are is not a weight loss drug. So the weight loss guidance doesn't really apply. We're a body composition drug. And the reason that's important is the endpoints, in this case, will be physical function. The size of the trial may be different because it's going to be given to older patients. And the endpoint, because it's physical function, which ultimately predicts what happens with falls and fractures and predicts mortality, it's a different game. And we're going to have full clarity on that once we meet with the FDA, which we expect will be early third quarter.
Excellent. Appreciate that background, Dr. Steiner, and certainly an exciting time ahead for Veru, especially with the catalyst that you outlined. Okay, so before we close, I have to ask you, Dr. Aronne, can you compare and contrast enobosarm and its profile to the other agents that are in clinical trials aiming to address this issue of enhancing fat loss while preserving lean muscle?
Sure. So there are other compounds that are in development that have shown a very similar effect in the earliest studies. And these are in two different categories. One are myostatin inhibitors. Myostatin is a hormone that suppresses muscle growth. When you inhibit myostatin, it allows muscle to grow. And another is the activin 2B mechanism, which also works through myostatin. And this mechanism has been shown to work. These are injectable. They will take time before they make it into the clinic. And enobosarm data, which is very promising, very preliminary, but very promising, is something that, because it's been studied in over 1,500 people already, and because it's oral, could be available sooner. It's possible it'll be the first one available. And just to reiterate some of the results, I mean, the reduction in the loss of lean mass was highly significant. When you look at the results, the reduction in power that occurred in the older patients, 60 or older, who were taking semaglutide alone, 42.6% had a more than 10% reduction in stair climbing power, as opposed to only 19.5%. So 50% fewer people had that problem. I mean, that's the first time I've seen the decline in power that can occur in people who are older. So I think it is waking us up to the potential that we see here. And this has been seen, by the way, in larger trials, but it's never been measured in quite the same way. So there's a lot going on in the field. We recognize that this is something that we have to deal with. We know that drugs like semaglutide provide overall better health, right? You're less likely to have a heart attack, a stroke, or die from any cause. That's pretty darn good. So it's not, no one is saying not to do it. We treat patients with these drugs all day long, and they are extremely grateful. But the question is always, what are we going to do next? This is what's coming next.
With that, this concludes our virtual investor KOL segment featuring Veru, and I'd like to thank Dr. Steiner and Aronne for their time today. As a reminder, Veru trades on NASDAQ under the ticker VERU. And if you like what you saw today, I encourage you to visit verupharma.com for more information on the company and to follow their social channels to stay current on the latest information. And you can also visit virtualinvestorco.com for the latest events calendar and replay of this segment. Gentlemen, thank you again. Great session today. Look forward to having you back, and I wish everyone a great rest of your day.